Ella sat alone in the dimly lit cafe, staring into the swirl of her untouched coffee. The rain drizzled against the window pane, echoing her mood. Trust, she thought bitterly, was as fragile as the porcelain cup in her hands. Once cracked, it could never truly be whole again. She had met Liam 5 years ago at a summer music festival. His easy smile and playful charm had drawn her in, and they'd quickly become inseparable. He made promises of forever, whispered in the stillness of midnight. She had believed every word, trusting him completely. But that trust was shattered 2 nights ago. Ella had come home early from a business trip, eager to surprise him. What she found instead was a betrayal that left her breathless. Another woman, wearing one of Liam's shirts, laughed in their living room. The room they had decorated together, the room that had been a sanctuary for their love. Liam's face turned pale when he saw her standing there. The woman hurriedly grabbed her things and left, mumbling apologies Ella didn't care to hear. What followed was a flood of excuses and promises from Liam, each one more hollow than the last. He blamed loneliness, stress, even alcohol, but Ella knew better. Cheating wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. The betrayal wasn't just about the act itself. It was about the trust he had violated, the security he had ripped away from her life. Their shared memories, their plans for the future, all of it felt tainted. How could she look at him and not see the lies hidden behind his warm brown eyes? Now, as she sat in the cafe, Ella wrestled with her next move. Friends had offered advice, some urging her to forgive, others telling her to walk away. But forgiveness wasn't something she could summon so easily. Forgiveness required effort, and Liam had already taken so much from her. Ella pulled out her phone, scrolling through pictures of them together. Each image brought a pang of pain. How could she ever believe in those moments again, knowing what he had done? The truth was clear. Liam had broken more than her heart. He had broken her ability to trust. And trust, once shattered, could never be glued back together without leaving scars. She stood up, leaving the untouched coffee behind. The rain soaked her as she stepped outside, but she welcomed it. It felt cleansing, like the first step toward starting over. As much as it hurt, Ella knew one thing with certainty. There could be no forgiveness when trust was irreparably broken. She walked away, knowing it was time to rebuild her life. A life without Liam, without lies, and without looking back. The rain masked the tears streaming down Ella's face as she walked aimlessly through the city streets. Her mind was a storm of emotions, anger, sadness, confusion. But beneath it all, there was a flicker of something else, determination. Liam had taken so much from her, but she wouldn't let him take her future too. She deserved better, and she would find a way to prove it to herself. Ella stopped at a small bookstore she had passed a dozen times but never entered. The inviting glow of warm lights beckoned her, a stark contrast to the chill outside. She stepped in, the bell above the door jingling softly. The air smelled of old paper and cinnamon, instantly calming her. "Can I help you find something?" The voice belonged to a man behind the counter. He had kind eyes and a gentle smile, the type of warmth that felt rare in her life lately. "I'm just browsing," Ella replied, though she wasn't entirely sure why she had walked in. Maybe she was searching for something, anything, to distract her. She wandered the aisles, her fingers trailing along the spines of books. One title caught her eye, Rebuilding After Betrayal. The irony wasn't lost on her. She pulled the book from the shelf and flipped through the pages. It was filled with stories of people who had survived heartbreak, found their strength, and moved forward. Ella didn't believe in fate, but the timing felt significant. She tucked the book under her arm and picked up a journal from a nearby shelf. Writing had always been her outlet, though she hadn't used it much in recent years. Maybe it was time to start again. As she approached the counter, the man smiled again. "That's a good one," he said, gesturing to the book. "I hope so," Ella replied with a weak smile. "I could use a little guidance right now." He hesitated, then said, "If it helps, my sister swears by journaling. She says it's like talking to someone who always listens." Ella nodded, Sounds like what I need. The transaction was quick, and soon she was back in the rain, clutching her new purchases like a lifeline. She didn't have all the answers, and she wasn't sure when the pain would subside, but she felt like she had taken her first step forward. That night, Ella opened the journal and began to write. At first, the words came slowly, hesitant and guarded. But as she poured out her thoughts, the floodgates opened. She wrote about Liam, about the betrayal, and about the dreams they had shared that now felt like ashes. But she also wrote about herself, the parts of her she had neglected in the name of their relationship, the hobbies she'd abandoned, the friends she hadn't seen in months, the dreams she put on hold. By the time she put down her pen, exhaustion had settled in, but it was a good kind of tired. The kind that came from working through something painful. In the days and weeks that followed, Ella found herself rebuilding piece by piece. She reconnected with old friends, started painting again, and even joined a local yoga class. Each small step felt like reclaiming a part of herself. Liam called once, his voice heavy with regret. He begged for another chance, swearing he would change. Ella listened, but when he was done, she calmly told him that some things couldn't be undone. She deserved love without conditions, without betrayals. As she hung up, she felt a strange sense of closure. Not for him, but for herself. She had chosen her path, one that didn't include him, and for the first time in a long time, she felt free. Ella learned that trust, once broken, might not always be repaired, but strength could be built in its place. And in that strength, she discovered something more valuable than forgiveness, her own resilience. Months passed, and the pain of Liam's betrayal dulled to a faint ache, like a scar that served as a reminder of lessons learned. Ella's life began to bloom in ways she hadn't expected. She wasn't merely surviving anymore. She was thriving. Her mornings were no longer clouded by doubt and sadness. She had developed new routines, ones that brought her joy. Her journal became her constant companion, each entry a testament to her healing. The bookstore visits turned into a weekly ritual, and over time, she grew friendly with Ryan, the man behind the counter. Ryan had a way of making her laugh, his sense of humor lightening even her heaviest days. They never spoke about her past. She wasn't ready to share that, but his presence was a quiet comfort. He was the kind of person who didn't demand anything from her, who respected her space yet made it clear he enjoyed her company. One afternoon, Ella sat in her favorite corner of the bookstore cafe, sipping tea and reading. Ryan approached with a hesitant smile. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Sure," Ella said, surprised by her own ease. They talked for hours about books, music, and life. For the first time in a long time, Ella found herself genuinely enjoying someone's company without the shadow of her past hanging over her. Weeks turned into months, and their friendship deepened. Ryan never pressed her for more than she was willing to give, but his quiet patience and kindness began to chip away at the walls she had built around her heart. One evening, as they walked through the park under a canopy of golden autumn leaves, Ryan paused and turned to her. "Ella," he said, his voice steady yet nervous, "I don't know what you've been through, but I know it's made you cautious. I just want you to know that I'm here, however you need me to be. No expectations, no pressure." His words hit her with a mix of emotions. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear something like that. Someone willing to be there without demanding pieces of her she wasn't ready to give. She nodded, her throat tight with unspoken gratitude. "Thank you, Ryan. That means a lot." It wasn't a grand declaration of love, but it was exactly what Ella needed. Someone who respected her journey. Someone who saw her not as a broken person to be fixed, but as someone capable of healing on her own terms. In the months that followed, their relationship blossomed, built on trust and mutual respect. Ella found herself smiling more, laughing easily, and feeling lighter than she had in years. One evening, as they sat together under a starry sky, Ryan reached for her hand. "You've been through so much, Ella," he said, his voice soft but firm. "But I see the strength in you. You're not just surviving, you're living. And if you let me, I'd like to be part of that life." Ella looked into his eyes, the vulnerability there mirroring her own. For the first time, she felt ready, not to forget her past, but to embrace a future untainted by it. "I'd like that too," she whispered. As their hands intertwined, Ella realized something profound. Forgiveness wasn't just about others. Sometimes, it was about forgiving herself, for trusting the wrong person, for staying too long, for doubting her ability to heal. In Ryan, she found someone who didn't demand forgiveness for what Liam had done. And in herself, she found the strength to open her heart again, not as someone broken, but as someone whole. The seasons turned, each passing day bringing Ella closer to a version of herself she hadn't seen in years. She no longer felt defined by Liam's betrayal or the pain it had caused. Instead, she saw her life as a canvas, each moment adding brushstrokes of healing, growth, and self-discovery. Ella and Ryan's bond deepened with time, but it was unlike any relationship she had known before. There were no grand gestures or rushed promises, only steady, consistent care. Ryan encouraged her independence, celebrating her victories no matter how small. When she decided to take a solo trip to a nearby coastal town, a dream she had always postponed, he helped her plan it, never once asking to tag along. The trip was transformative. Standing on the shoreline, with the ocean stretching endlessly before her, Ella felt a sense of freedom she hadn't realized she craved. The waves crashing against the rocks seemed to echo her journey, turbulent, relentless, yet undeniably powerful. She spent days walking the beach, sketching in her journal, and rediscovering her love for solitude. When she returned, there was a newfound confidence in her. Ryan noticed it immediately, greeting her with a smile as warm as the sun. "You look like you found a piece of yourself out there," he said softly. "I think I did," Ella replied, feeling the truth of her words. One evening, months later, Ella decided it was time to share her story with Ryan. They sat together on the balcony of her apartment, the city lights twinkling below. She recounted everything: the festival where she met Liam, the love they had shared, and the heartbreak of discovering his betrayal. She didn't cry. She had shed enough tears in the past. Instead, her voice was steady, her gaze unwavering. Ryan listened intently, his expression a mixture of sadness and admiration. When she finished, he reached out and gently took her hand. "Thank you for trusting me with that," he said. "You didn't deserve what happened, Ella. But the way you rebuilt yourself, it's incredible. You're incredible." His words warmed her, but what mattered most was his understanding. He didn't try to diminish her pain or offer empty reassurances. He simply acknowledged her strength, something she had fought hard to reclaim. Their relationship continued to evolve, marked by moments of quiet intimacy and mutual respect. Ryan never tried to fix her because he recognized that she wasn't broken. Ella, in turn, found herself opening up more, not out of obligation, but because she genuinely wanted to share her life with him. One crisp winter evening, as they walked through a holiday market, Ryan paused in front of a stall selling handmade ornaments. He picked up a small, intricately carved star and handed it to Ella. "For your tree," he said with a smile. A reminder that even in the darkest nights, there's always light. Ella's heart swelled. It was such a simple gesture, yet it spoke volumes about the man he was: thoughtful, kind, and patient. She smiled back, tucking the star into her bag. As they strolled through the market, Ella realized she was no longer haunted by her past. The pain Liam had caused was a part of her story, but it didn't define her anymore. She had reclaimed her narrative, filling it with new chapters of resilience, love, and self-worth. That night, as she hung the star on her tree, Ella reflected on how far she had come. Liam's betrayal had once seemed like the end of her world, but it had become the beginning of something far greater. She had learned to trust herself, to find joy in the little things, and to embrace a love that didn't demand pieces of her she wasn't ready to give. Ella glanced at Ryan, who was sitting on her couch, flipping through one of her art books. She felt a warmth she hadn't known in years, a quiet certainty that whatever the future held, she was ready for it. Because now she knew trust could be rebuilt, not just in others, but in herself. And that was the foundation of everything she needed to move forward. The following spring brought a sense of renewal to Ella's life, both literally and metaphorically. The once barren trees were now lush with green leaves, and the sun seemed to linger longer in the sky, casting warm hues over the city. Ella found herself embracing this season of transformation with open arms. Her art, which had been a private solace for years, became something more. Encouraged by Ryan and her friends, she signed up for a local gallery's open exhibition. It felt vulnerable to put her work on display, but it also felt right, another step in reclaiming her identity. Her pieces, inspired by the ocean, the rain, and her journey of healing, caught the attention of gallery visitors. One patron even purchased a painting, a milestone that left Ella beaming with pride. Ryan was there that night, his unwavering support shining through. He stood beside her as she greeted admirers of her work, his presence a quiet anchor amidst the whirlwind of excitement. After the event, they walked home hand in hand, Ella carrying flowers gifted by attendees. "You were amazing tonight," Ryan said as they strolled through the quiet streets. "Seeing you share your art with the world, it was inspiring." Ella smiled up at him. "I never thought I'd be brave enough to do something like this. But you were right. I'm stronger than I ever gave myself credit for." As the months went on, Ella and Ryan's relationship deepened into something profoundly meaningful. They traveled together, explored new hobbies, and shared quiet moments that felt like the essence of love, unrushed, unforced, and deeply rooted in mutual respect. Ryan never pushed Ella to move faster than she was comfortable, and she found herself appreciating his patience more than words could express. One summer evening, as they sat on the beach during a weekend getaway, Ryan turned to her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Ella," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion, "being with you has been the greatest privilege of my life. You've shown me what resilience looks like, what it means to truly grow and heal. I love you, not just for who you are, but for the strength you've shown in becoming who you want to be." Ella's breath caught in her throat. She had known for some time that she loved Ryan, but hearing the words from him felt like a turning point. This was a love she had never experienced before, gentle, kind, and without conditions. "I love you too," she said softly, her voice steady. "You've taught me so much about what love should feel like. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of it." As they sat together, the waves lapping at their feet, Ella felt a sense of peace she hadn't known was possible. She realized that her past, while painful, had led her to this moment. Liam's betrayal had shattered her, but it had also forced her to rebuild herself in a way that allowed her to discover who she truly was, and to find someone who loved her for exactly that. In the end, Ella's journey wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about transforming it. Trust, once broken, could indeed be rebuilt, not just in others, but in oneself. And through that trust, a new and brighter future could emerge. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Ella leaned into Ryan, her heart full of gratitude and hope. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, she was excited to find out. Together, they would face it. One moment, one step, and one the years that followed brought challenges, joys, and moments of quiet contentment that shaped Ella and Ryan's lives together. Their relationship continued to flourish, built on a foundation of mutual trust and deep respect. Yet, their love wasn't just about happiness. It was about growth, individually and as a couple. Ella's art career blossomed further. What began as a personal outlet became a central part of her life. She held her first solo exhibition 2 years after that initial gallery debut, with every piece reflecting her journey. Each painting was a celebration of resilience, capturing themes of transformation, trust, and love. Ryan, always her biggest supporter, stood proudly at her side during the opening night, offering encouragement and love in the quiet, unassuming way that was so uniquely him. During one particularly moving moment at the exhibit, a woman approached Ella, her eyes glistening with tears. "Your work speaks to me," she said. "It's like you've painted my story too. The pain, the hope, the healing. Thank you for showing me it's possible to move forward." The words struck a chord with Ella. She realized that by sharing her vulnerability through her art, she wasn't just healing herself. She was inspiring others. The sense of purpose that came with that realization was profound. Meanwhile, Ryan found his own passions evolving. Inspired by Ella's courage, he decided to leave his job at the bookstore and pursue his dream of becoming a teacher. With Ella's encouragement, he enrolled in an education program and began working with children at a local school. His natural kindness and patience made him a favorite among his students, and he often came home with stories that made Ella laugh or marvel at his ability to connect with others. Their lives intertwined beautifully, but they never lost sight of the importance of maintaining their individuality. Ella continued to take solo trips, finding inspiration for her art, while Ryan spent weekends coaching a youth soccer team. They supported each other's independence, knowing that their relationship was strongest when they nurtured their own dreams. One crisp autumn evening, as they walked through the park where Ryan had first confessed his feelings, he stopped suddenly and turned to her. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Our journey hasn't always been easy, but it's been the most meaningful part of my life. I want to keep walking this path with you, for as long as you'll have me." Before Ella could respond, Ryan pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a simple yet elegant ring. The sight took Ella's breath away, not because of the ring itself, but because of what it represented, a love that had grown slowly, patiently, and deeply. "Ella," he said, his voice filled with sincerity, "will you marry me?" Tears welled up in her eyes as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. 1,000 times yes. They embraced under the golden hues of the setting sun, their laughter and tears mingling in a moment that felt timeless. Ella thought back to the woman she had been years ago, the one who had believed her world was ending. That woman would never have imagined this moment. But Ella knew now that sometimes endings were just disguised beginnings. Their wedding, a small and intimate affair, was a reflection of who they were as a couple. Surrounded by close friends and family, Ella and Ryan exchanged vows under an open sky, the stars bearing witness to their promises. As they danced together that night, Ella felt a peace she had never known, a deep understanding that love, when rooted in trust and respect, could be the most transformative force of all. In the years to come, they built a life filled with shared dreams, unexpected adventures, and the kind of love that didn't just heal wounds, but created something entirely new. Together, they proved that while trust could be broken, it could also be rebuilt. And when it was, it became the foundation for something unshakable to every night at a time.